Before we begin this tutorial, I would like to thank freepik.com for the logo we are going to animate. The link to this asset is available in the description and you can download it for free. We'll be using the latest version of Blender at the time of this recording, which is Blender 2.83. Download the project files for this tutorial in the description so you can follow along. I will briefly explain how you can prepare your logo for the best results. Use any application you're comfortable with. Just make sure that your logo is split into components or layers. You need to visualize your logo in layers, merging shapes where it is necessary. I chose to use Adobe Illustrator for this, as I found it easier to combine elements. One more important factor is to export or save your logo as a SVG file. If you created the entire logo in Inkscape, you can save the file and go straight ahead to the next step, which is importing the SVG file to Blender. If you exported or saved your logo with Adobe Illustrator, you might find that the file will not open in Blender right away, or it will import without color. To fix this, open the SVG file you exported in Inkscape. Create a new layer. Select everything, cut and paste into the new layer, and go ahead and save it. Doing this will ensure Blender recognizes the layers and materials. Open Blender. Delete everything in the viewport. Go to File, Import, then Scalable Vector Graphics. Locate and choose the SVG logo file and click the Import SVG button. By default, Blender will import all the layers in one collection. Since the layers were created in 2D space, they will all be placed on the same axis. You may need to adjust the viewport clipping to make sure you see everything. To do this, open the View menu by pressing the N key, then adjust the clip start to your liking. Press N again to hide the menu. Now we will select each layer and press G, then Z to drag it along the Z axis. Click to confirm the position. We will also rename these layers to make it easier for us to locate them when we need to make adjustments. To fast forward this process, we will open our project files. Open the file named Stage 2 Imported Flat Layered Logo. You will find all these layers have been named. We will be referring to these names as we progress. Our next step is extrusion. In this process, we have the freedom of choosing the thickness of our logo components. I will start by selecting my bottommost layer in the viewport, in this case, the shield backing layer. Go to the Object Data Properties tab. Scroll to the Geometry section, go to Extrude, and change the extrusion to whichever value you prefer. I will change mine to 0.002. It is now extruded. Select it and press G, then Z, and move it down. Go on to the second layer, which is the blue shield piece. Navigate to Extrude, as we did before, and add an extrusion of 0.002. Only this time, after extruding, we will sink the shape down into the first shape we created. Now let's move on to our third layer, which is the shield spec layer. Select it and enter an extrusion of 0.001. And sink the layer into the second extrusion layer we created. Repeat this process for the rest of the layers. You can switch between the current view and the right orthographic view by pressing 3 on your number pad. This will help you check the height you are setting. Add varying thicknesses to your shapes and adjust the height to your liking. To fast forward this process, open the project file Stage 3 Extruded 3D Logo. We will be using this file for the next stage. Now we'll go on to setting up our camera. We just need to centralize our logo to the viewport first. Hit A on your keyboard to select everything, then enter Shift S and choose Selection to Cursor Keep Offset. This will move everything to the cursor without distorting our composition. Create a new collection and name it Camera. Now we'll add a curve to this collection, which will act as our camera rail. With the collection still selected, go to Add, Curve, Circle. Zoom out in the viewport, and you will notice that we have a large rail in relation to our logo. You will also notice that the rail spline has been created on the vertical axis. We are going to rotate and resize it. Press R, then X, and enter 90 to rotate it. In order to see it better, press 1 on the number pad to switch to front orthographic view. Here is our logo in relation to the rail. With the rail still selected, press S and drag in to scale it. Round about here is OK. Select the camera collection and go to Add, Camera. Now we're going to attach the camera to the rail by parenting. Select the camera and go to the Object Properties tab. Then Relations, Parent. Click on the picker and click on the rail to make it the parent of the camera. You can pick the rail in the outliner window or in the viewport. Press 0 to go into camera view. You may notice our logo is upside down. All we need to do is rotate it. Hold down your mouse wheel and drag to move out of camera view. Switch off the rail and the camera in the collection. Press A to select everything. Then R, X, enter 180. This will rotate our logo such that it's facing up. Switch your camera and rail back on and press 0 on your number pad to go into camera view. Here we see the logo right in the center of the camera view. If your view of the logo is too close or too far, just select the rail and scale it up or down. This will adjust the distance. If you need to adjust the height to get the logo more centralized, select the rail, then press G and Y to make the adjustments. Now with the rail still selected, press R then Y and move your mouse around to rotate. You will see that this action will make it seem like the logo is rotating, yet it's actually the rail with the camera attached to it. Press 0 to move out of camera view to see this in more detail. Press R then Y and again rotate it. Press Escape to restore the position of the rail. From here on, we'll be varying our logo animation. We will do two simple processes. We will use modifiers to alter the shape of some of our elements, and we will affect their transformation by adjusting their scale, location, and rotation. In this section, you have the freedom of adding these parameters to your liking. We will be animating the logo backwards, meaning we will go ahead in the timeline and record the current position, scale, and rotation, and we will go right to the start of the timeline and do the same thing. Go to the timeline window and scrub the playhead by about 80 frames. I want to leave the first layer where it is, so I will start by selecting the second layer of my logo. Navigate to the Object Properties tab, expand the Transform section, and place a keyframe on the Z location field. I am placing a keyframe here because I want this piece to just fly in from behind the camera. Jump back to the beginning of the timeline, and with the current piece still selected, press G, then Z, and drag the piece outside the radius of the rail. Now in the location parameters, Add a keyframe for this position in the Z field. Press 1 on the number pad to move into front orthographic view and press play or spacebar to preview the movement. The animation is a bit slow, but we will adjust the speed. Grab the last keyframe in the timeline, that is this one, and drag it closer to the beginning of the timeline to about frame 10. Press play and preview the speed. I will animate the next layer, which is the orange shield layer. I want this to drop into the scene as soon as the first layer locks into position. I will scrub ahead in the timeline to about frame 80 and place a keyframe for its current location on the y-axis. Then scroll back to frame 10, which is the last keyframe of the previous layer. Press G, then Y, and move the shape up. Click to confirm. Insert a keyframe to record this position in the Y field. Adjust the speed like we did before by moving the last keyframe in the timeline closer or further to the first keyframe as you wish. For our third layer, which is the shield spec layer, we'll change the position and rotation. Scrub to frame 80 and insert a keyframe for its Z location and Y rotation. Then scrub back to the last keyframe of the second layer, in my case, frame 17. Press G, then Z, and move the shape outside the rail radius. Press R, then Y, and enter -180 to rotate the shape along the y-axis. Record this position. This animation will cause it to spin into position. For our fourth layer, which is the stripes layer, we will not change the position, rather we will add a modifier. Go to the modifiers tab and add a decimate modifier. Go to the ratio field and right click. Choose Insert Keyframe. Now scrub back to the last frame of your previous piece's animation and adjust the ratio to 0. Right-click and insert a keyframe here. Play back the animation and make adjustments to the modifier speed in the same way we did for the other shapes. For the fifth layer, which is the blue main layer, we will just fly into the scene in a similar way to the first layer we animated. That's pretty much how we animate the logo components. Now, like I said, the movements are entirely up to you. I will now go into more detail about how I animated the letters. Select the first letter, in this case, the letter T. Scrub ahead in your timeline and go into the Object Data Properties. Record the Z location and the Y rotation. We'll also record the scale. Do the same for the rest of the letters. Now, we'll scrub back in the timeline to set the letters' position, rotation, and scale. Select the first letter. Hold down Shift to select the rest of the letters. Press G and then Z. Then drag the letters behind the camera. Now select each letter and rotate on the Y-axis by about 180 degrees. We will also scale the letters individually. Select the first layer, then go into the scale field, and in the properties, enter 0.4. Enter the same values in the Y and the Z field. Now if we play our animation, looking at the letters, they fly in at the same time. We just need to offset each letter's end keyframe. To do this, we will use markers. Select the first letter, scrub to its last keyframe, and press M to add a marker. Now select the second letter, that is the letter I, and pick the letter's last keyframe, and drag it a little ahead of the marker we made. Drag the playhead to this keyframe and press M to mark its position. Move on to the next letter, that's G, and drag its last keyframe ahead of the marker we made for the letter I. And mark its position in the same way we did for I. Repeat this for the remainder of our letters. Doing this successfully will result in a wave-like entrance of the letters. Now to complete this tutorial, we'll create and record our camera movement by rotating the rail spline we made earlier. Select the rail in the Outliner tab. Scrub ahead in the timeline and record the current rotation on the Y-axis. Jump to the beginning of the timeline and press R to rotate. Then Y to constrain the movement, then rotate the view to a point when the logo is showing on its side view. Add a rotation keyframe in the Y rotation field to record this position, and play back the animation to preview the rotation. Lastly, I will show you how to set up your materials so you can customize them with the Cycles node. Drag open a window and change to the Shade Editor. Now select any component of the logo and head over to the Material Properties tab. We'll start by copying our current color code. Click in the Base Color field. Highlight and copy the color code that's there. Close the dialog box and click the Use Nodes button. When you click the button, a printsport material will be added in the Shade Editor. Now click on the base color, highlight the color code that's there and paste the one we copied earlier. And there you have it. You can now make it more reflective, you can add textures, you can make it glow, the list is endless. In the Materials Property tab, You can copy and paste the material onto other objects easily. That's it for today. Remember to like and subscribe. And as usual, feel free to ask any questions you may have regarding this tutorial.